Okay, so we are up to the new parak on Daf Mem Aleph Amar Aleph for Ish Mekadesh. Zog the Heilige Mishnah. For Ish Mekadesh, boy uvishluch. A person can be Mekadesh, a woman, by himself, or he can appoint a shliach. For Isha Miskadeshes, bo uvishlucha. A woman can also appoint a shliach to receive Kiddushin. For Ish Mekadesh is Bitoy Keshi Naira. A father also has a right to accept a Kiddushin on behalf of his daughter. If she's a Naira, boy uvishluch. He can accept the Kiddushin by himself, or he can accept the Kiddushin for his daughter through a shliach. Frag the Gemara. If he could be Mekadesh, a woman with a shliach, boy mi boy, does the Mishnah need to say, Ha'ish Mekadesh boy uvishluchai? The Mishnah could have just said, Ha'ish Mekadesh v'shluchai. And of course, he could be Mekadesh by himself. Rabbi Yosef, it's the Mishnah is trying to impart a message that mitzvah boy yosher mi b'shluchai. It's better to do the mitzvah by yourself than to use a shliach. And there's a story with Berish Zolty, where Parshas Boy, one Shabbos afternoon, Parshas Boy, he saw a guest, an older bacher, in the back of the Bismedish before Mincha. And he went over to the bacher, he said, Shalom Aleichem, what's Machzor, what's this to do? So he said, it's Parshas Boy, and the yeshiva gave us an off Shabbos, and I came to spend the off Shabbos in Toronto. So Berish Zolty says, I don't think so. Lo tviyich gedenk, the Av Shabbos was Shabbos Shida, Parshas B'Shalach, not Parshas Boy. Aber ich mein, ich weiß, verwusst die bist du. Weil der steht in der Gemurah of Mitzvah Boy, Yosy mi b'shlichai. That was a better Zolty. Ki ha, the Absafra. Where do you see examples of Gedoyle Oila that decided to do the mitzvah by themselves, even though they could have got other people to take care of it? Like Reb Safar Machrich Reisha. He would singe the head of the animal that was part of the cooking preparation of the animal. For Shabbos, he would do it himself. He would make the food preparations by himself. Rava Malach Shibuta. Rava salted the fish. He made his own herring. So that is the reason why it is boy Yosy mi b'shluchai. Ikad Amrei, but there's another pshat in why the Mishnah says Ha'ish Mekadesh boy ub'shluchai, because Baha Yisura Name Yispa. There's actually an isser for a man to be Mekadesh a woman through a shliach. He had to do it by himself. Why can't he do it through a shliach? Zoktamar Kedir Rav Yehuda Amarav. The Amar Rav Yehuda Amarav Osir lo Adam sheYikadesh es Isha ad she'irenu. A man is not allowed to marry a woman unless he sees her first and he likes her. Because if he just marries her sight unseen, Shema Yira Ba'davar Maguna, he might see something in her when he meets her that he doesn't like, and his wife will not be beloved to him, and that's not nice to marry a woman who you're not going to be able to love properly. Torah says you have to love somebody else like yourself, and nobody would want their daughter to be in a marriage if their daughter wasn't appreciated by her husband. And therefore, the husband is mechuyev to see the wife before he marries her, so it shouldn't lead to a marriage where he's not interested in it. And Tosfos asks, so why can't he meet her first, date her, and then be Mekadesh through a shliach? Tosfos ain't economic. But the Mishnah doesn't want to limit itself to a specific case where he knows her in advance. So therefore the Mishnah says, mitzvah boy Yosy mi b'shluchai, because it's really usher for someone to marry a woman if he never saw. But Rabbi Yosef didn't make a comment on our Mishnah that mitzvah boy Yosy mi b'shluchai. It's not on the Reisha, but rather it's a Seifa Itmar. The second case of the Mishnah, which is addressing the woman. A woman could accept Kiddushin herself, or she can have a shliach accept the Kiddushin for her. So the Gemara asked the same question as before. If she could appoint the shliach to accept Kiddushin for her, surely she can accept Kiddushin on her own. Rabbi Yosef, and on this Rabbi Yosef commented, mitzvah ba Yosy mi b'shlucha k'adar Safar Machach Reisha Rava Malach Shibuta Avol Baha Isur Lastba. There's no isur for a woman to marry without seeing her husband, because we're never worried that she won't be happy. Rish Lakish, like Rish Lakish taught us, the Amar Rish Lakish, Tav L'meit of Tandu, L'meis of Harmony. A woman would rather live with somebody than live alone. So she says that my husband's not bad, he's better than nothing. And that's why a woman will be happy. Frank Rashi, a Pasha Kasha. If a woman was Mimana Shliach to accept Kiddushin from her husband, well, Viter, her husband didn't see her. And Viter, her husband's going to be being Oiber and Isser of a Hakel Rachakamayta. So Rashi Einachanami. But the Sefer the Mishnah is not talking from the perspective of the husband. That was the Reisha. The Sefer is speaking about the perspective of the woman. From the perspective of the woman, on her part, there is no Isser in marrying without seeing her husband, because she made a conscious decision that she wants to be married. It doesn't matter what he looks like. Zok the Mishnah weiter, ha'ish mekadesh aspitoi keshu inaira. Zok the Gemara keshi naira in kishaktana loy. The Mishnah specifies naira. Now we know that a father has a right to be makabel kedushin for his daughter when she's a tana as well. It's a kavachomer. Even when she's a naira, he can accept her kedushin. What is the Mishnah trying to tell us by not saying Ketana? Messiah le Rav, the Amar of Yehuda Amarav, Yitem Rabbi Lazar, Aser la'adam, she'ikadish es bitoi, kishiktana, achet higadel, v'toimar befloini, and he writes. Even though technically a father can be Mekabel Kedushin on behalf of his daughter who's a Tana, but that's the wrong thing to do. It's also to do because there's actually Shalom Rishonim, it's Mamish Osir, if it's the wrong thing to do, because what does it end up accomplishing? It might be that this marriage will never work out and it will create a disaster. Frag Taitvis, don't we say Tav L'meit of Tandu Milames of Armalu? So no matter what shall be happy? So Taitvis, there's a limit how far that goes. If a woman made a conscious decision, I want to marry this man even though I haven't seen him, because I'd rather live with a man than live alone, yes, such a woman, we're not concerned that the marriage won't work out. She made her decision. But for a father to marry a Tana who doesn't have much seichel to make a decision like that, on the smach that he could rely on Tav L'meit of Tandu, that will not work. However, Tosfos makes a very interesting comment which indicates how things were back then in the 1200s when Tosfos wrote his period. We think that the shidduch crisis is a new thing from the 20th century. No, Tosfos said there was a shidduch crisis back then as well. And I'm looking at Tosfos right across from the Bach. The Akshav Shanu Noyag in the Kaddish B'nai Seinu, Afiluk Tanos, correct Tosfos, if the Gemara says it's not appropriate to marry off a daughter Tana, why is it commonplace in our circles in the 1200s? Tosfos lives in the time of the Crusaders, where communities were literally being slaughtered one after the other. And even those who survived were left poverty-stricken. And therefore, if someone has some nadin that he can give his daughter and marry her off, he should grab the opportunity even if his daughter's a ktana. It's very possible that his circumstances could change and he will no longer have the money to marry off his daughter. And she will remain an aguna. It doesn't literally mean an aguna. It means she will remain a spinster. She won't be able to find a shidduch. Therefore, if you're in a situation where you could marry off your daughter, grab the opportunity and don't delay. Shlichus. We're getting now into a massive shas sugya, the sugya of shlichus. This is fodder for our Rosh Hashiva to the shiurim for months and months. When we learned Afyomi, we could only literally just scrape the surface of how deep this sugya is. Zok tehelig Gemara, shlichus minola. The Mishnah tells us that shlichus works for Kiddushin. Where does the Mishnah, where does the Tana, where in the Torah did the Tana see that shlichus is a possibility? The Tanya, it says in the pasuk. So I'm lucky that I have here at the side of the Gemara, the Psukim. It says, Ki yigach ish isha uba'Allah, v'hoya im loisim tzachein be'enav ki motza be'erbas davar, The chazav law sefer krisus v'nosam biyada v'shilcha mibeisa. Zok Rashi, it didn't have to say v'nosam biyada v'shilcha mibeisa. It could have said v'nosam biyada v'girsha mibeisa, which would have been a more appropriate lashon. It's a gerushin. Why does the Mishnah deviate from the most typical word and select the word shiluach? Zok the Heilige Gemara, the Tanya v'shilach. Why did it use a lashon of shiluach and not a lashon of gerushin? Malamed shu oiseh shliach, to tell us that the husband could make a shliach to divorce his wife. But it doesn't say v'shilach mi beisai. It says v'shilcha with a mapikei mi beisai. V'shilcha malamed shehi oiseh shliach. And Rashi says we darshan as if it said v'shilcha without a mapikei, and it means v'shilcha, she is appointing a shliach to accept her get. V'shilach v'shilcha. If you look to the next pasuk, not directly, next a couple of psukim later, where she remarried, and then it was snei isha acharoi. The chazav lo sefer krisus v'nosam biyadei v'shilcha mibeisai. Another time it says v'shilcha mibeisai. It could have just said v'nosam biyadei. We already know that we're talking about gerushin. So it says an extra word there, malamed shashliach oiseh shliach. That even one who appoints a shliach to make gerushin, that shliach can pass that shliach leilacha on. So one shliach leilacha can pass on the minui shlichus to the next shliach leilacha. So we've seen quite thoroughly every different option of shlichus by gerushin that the Torah is telling us it works. But the Kiddushin we know, just because you know shlichus works for gerushin, who said that it works for Kiddushin? And our subject matter here is Kiddushin. If you're going to say it's a bit enough, if you see it works by gerushin, so let it work by Kiddushin as well. So there's a strong reason why it would work by gerushin, yet not by Kiddushin. Because Mala gerushin, we see that the Torah made it easier to divorce a woman. You can divorce her against her will. So we're predispositioned to say the gerushin is a good gerushin. That's why a shliach would be effective. But by Kiddushin, who said that shlichus would be effective? On Merkra, we have this pasuk that's makish, gerushin to Kiddushin, and Kiddushin to gerushin, and we can always pass halachas from one to the other. It says v'yatza v'haisa, and the words of the pasuk are v'yatza mi beisai, v'halcha v'haisa li'chaka, makish havai li'yitzia. We are comparing becoming a wife, Kiddushin, li'yitzia, to being sent away to gerushin. Ma yitzia mashva shliach. Just like by gerushin, you can make a shliach. The Torah tells us b'shilcha. Afavayinami so to by Kiddushin mashva shliach. Right? We know that the whole makar that you could make Kiddushin with star is also from this v'yatza v'haisa. Zokti Gemara ve'elohadet nan. So we found a nice source for shlichus by Kiddushin and a nice source for shlichus by gerushin. But there's other places in the Torah where we see shlichus as well. We need a source for those as well. If someone tells a shliach, say teroim, go separate truma on my behalf from my produce. The halacha is the shlich is teirem kedas balabayis. Now Tosfos tells us and Rashi tells us that there's 3 different shiurim of truma. Someone who's generous will give 1 out of 40. Someone who's stingy will give 1 out of 60. The average person gives 1 out of 50, which is 2%. So therefore, if you are Mimana Shliach to take Truma on your behalf, he should take the amount that he assesses you as being that type of person. What if the Shliach is not able to assess? Does this fellow want me to be mafish 1 in 40 in a generous way, 1 in 60 in a stingy way? So what should he do? The best thing is to go middle of the road. Now, there's a very interesting halacha here, a little bit off the daf, but very important. Where do these shiurim come from? 1 in 50, 1 in 40, 1 in 60. The Torah just says, all the Torah just says is Reishis de Gontcha. And Midaraisa, we learn Afilu chita achas paiter says akri. Even if you separated one kernel for truma, the entire pile of tfuah is no longer teva. So where do these shiurim come from? We find in the Torah, we actually find it several places in the Torah. One of the places you find it is what malachis are also to do on Chalamoy, where the Torah says a general rule, and the Torah leaves it to the Chachamim to tell us what exactly are these shiurim. And that's a deraisa, it's not a derabbanan. The Torah left it up to the Rabbanim to tell us what is the right amount for truma, 1/50th, 1/60th, or 1/40th. So the question is, if chita achas pateis is a kri, what are these shiurim of 1/40th, 1/50th, and 1/60th? So there's a fascinating Noid Yehuda who tells us, I'm going to tell you a bombshell chiddush that no one ever thought of since Brias Olam. Not the Mishnah, not the Gemara, not the Rishonim, no Achronim. I just came up with this chiddush. And the Noid Yehuda says, the chiddush is that even though we know the halach is chita achas pateres as a kri, that's l'gabi being matter the rest of the wheat. It's no longer tevel; it can be eaten. But you are not mekayim the mitzvah of nesinas truma. The mitzvah of nesinas truma is with either 1/60th, 1/50th, or 1/40th, and that's how we separate it. Unbeknownst to the Noid Yehuda, there is a rishon who says the same shot. But the Noid Yehuda didn't have access to this Rishon. In the last 20 years, more Rishonim have come out with Svarim than Achronim because of the manuscripts that were found and developed from institutions like Moshe Rav Kook. So the Rishon that the Noid Yehuda did not have access to was the Tosfos Rid. It's a pretty common Rishon for us today, but he didn't have it. And the Tosfos Rid says this as well. That chita achas patesh akri is patesh akri. It makes that it's not teva, but you will not be mekayim the mitzvah of truma unless you gave a minimum of 1/60. So this brisa or this mission that we're learning here is telling us that shlichus clearly works. It's just discussing how much the shliach has to give, but clearly shlichus works. So let's turn on to Mem Aleph Amud Beis. What if the shliach gave 1/40th and he was supposed to give less, or if he gave 1/60th? And there's a shaila between Rashi and Tosfos what piches means and what hoisef means. But regardless, one of them means he gave more, and one of them means he gave less. Truma, his truma will still be equal truma. So frankly, we know how do you see here shlichus works? Where did the Mishnah know that shlichus works to be mafish truma? And if you're going to tell me, well, if we see shlichus by Gerushin, we can apply it to Chalatar Kula, so we can apply it to Truma as well. Zok Gemara, you wouldn't know from Gerushin, because Mala Gerushin, Shekin Yeshnan Chal. Gerushin is completely Chal. There's no Kedusha here. Maybe Truma, which has a Kedusha to it, maybe that's something that the Baal has to make by himself. Zok Gemara, there's a pasuk by Truma that teaches us that shlichus works. Amar Kra, atem gamatem. So the pasuk says, let's find the pasuk. It says, "Kain tarimu gam atem terumas Hashem mikol ma'ashrosei." It could have said, "Kain tarimu atem trumas Hashem." Why does the pasuk stick in this extra word gam? Zok Gemara, atem gamatem l'rabbeis is a shliach to tell us that a shliach can make truma. Frank the Gemara, once the Torah taught us by Truma than Shlichus, why did the Torah need to tell us by Gerushin? Why don't we learn Gerushin and Kiddushin from Truma? Why did we need a special limit of a Shilcha? Because we cannot learn from Truma to Gerushin. What's unique about being mafresh truma, actually kachim as well, as we're soon going to see, is you don't even have to physically separate the truma from the tevel. You can just have in mind, I think that side over there, I'm going to make it the truma, and the rest will be chul. So you could do it without any action. You surely cannot give a get or a kedushin without any action. So therefore, we need a pasuk by truma to tell us that shlichus works, and we need a pasuk by Gerushin as well to tell us that shlichus works. Frek Gemara, okay, we have truma, we have Gerushin. What about kachim? We're going to illustrate to you now with a mishnah that shlichus works for kachim. What's the source that shlichus works for kachim? A group of people got together and they bought a carbon pesach and they were going to be makriv together. And the sheep went missing. So what did they do? They took one of their group and they asked them, go find it. And when you find it, as soon as you find the animal, take it to the base of mikdash, shech it on our behalf, so we'll be able to participate in the carbon pesach. And he succeeded. The problem is they were on shpilkes, they couldn't wait, they panicked, and in the meantime, they went and bought another animal and they gathered around and were mamana on another animal. So let's think about it. If his was shachled first, and he was their shliach, so they already brought a carbon pesach. Once you bring a carbon pesach, even if you are mamana on another carbon, that's nothing, because you can't bring two carbon pesach. So therefore, they will join him on the carbon pesach that he found, because he was their shliach, and shlichus works, and therefore they're part of his shlichus. So we know, where do you know from that shlichus works by kachim like a carbon pesach? And if you're going to say, the Torah already taught us by Gerushin the shlichus, the Torah already taught us by Truma to the shlichus, the same way the shlichus by Gerushin and Truma, there'll be shlichus by kachim as well. Zot Gemara, that's not a good raya. Compared to kachim, Truma is choil, and for sure Gerushin is choil. Zot Gemara, you're right. We need a special source for kachim, and we have one. Not Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. How do you know that the shliach of a person is as if he himself did it? Shenemar, it says regarding the carbon pesach in the midbar, not in the midbar, in Mitzrayim. This is right there in Parashat Shemos, in the Parashat of Achoydos Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodoshim. Right in Mitzrayim, the Torah tells Klal Yisrael, "V'shachtu oisoi kol adas Yisrael bein harbayim." Every member of Klal Yisrael should check the carbon. Right the Gemara, v'chikol akal shuk kul shoychin, following in the shoychin alecha. There's no way every single person checked the carbon. Only one person checks each carbon. So the fact that the Torah considers it like they all shechted it, so now we have a source by kachim that shlucha shel adam kamayis. Frek the Gemara, now that we have this source, why do we need truma and why do we need gerushin? Nichta rachmana bekachim v'nesi hanach v'nigmaru minei. Let's learn gerushin and truma from kachim. Dr. Gemara from the Ikal Mifrach. You know why shlichus works for the shechita of the carbon pesach? Because shlichus is a common theme in the sugya of kachim. There's always a kohen doing it on behalf of us. So that's how kachim rolls. That's how kachim works. But to apply this Kiddush concept of shlichus to truma and to gerushin and to Kiddushin. So tomorrow, in fact, if the Torah mentioned either kachim by itself, or gerushin by itself, or truma by itself, we wouldn't know the others. But maybe the Torah could have only written 2 out of 3, and we would have known the hilchos of shlichus by everything. So let's try this out. Maybe we can learn 1 from 2 that would have been written. Hey, Tasi, what should we learn out of the other 2? Are you suggesting like nichtei rachmana bekachim? The Torah should not have told us by kachim, as we just said a moment ago. Malahanach, truma, and gerushin, chicken yeshnan, chayletzel kachim. Compared to kachim, they're chayl. So let's suggest by nichtei rachmana begerushin. Maybe the Torah should not have told us about shlichus by gerushin, and we would have learned it from truma and kachim. So Gemara malahanach, chicken yeshnan b'machshava. Truma and kachim, you can both be mafish b'machshava. Like we said earlier, if someone says this part of the pile, he didn't say that, he merely thought it. This part of the pile should be truma, it will become truma. Rashi tells us as well when it comes to kachim, if you think I want this ox to be a carbon, it becomes a carbon. By Gershon, it doesn't work that way. Ella maybe the Torah should have skipped out gamatem, and we would have known it from kachim and Gershon. So in fact, that would work. And we don't need gamatem to teach us shlichus by truma. So if we don't need gamatem to teach us shlichus by truma, well, what is gamatem coming to tell you? It's an extra gam. Why did the Torah say gam? What is the Torah teaching us with that gam? So tomorrow, Rabbi Yanai gam atem. What do we learn from gam atem? That your shliach has to be similar to yourself. Ma'atem b'nei Berish, just like you're Jewish, you could make truma av shluchachem b'nei Berish. The only person that you could appoint to separate truma for you is a Jew. So let's stop here for one brief moment. Rebel, you're on mute. You're still on mute, so I cannot hear you. Cannot hear you yet. Still showing that you're muted.
Okay. Yeah. What's the havamina that you should use a guy for witness?
Not for a witness, for a shliach to make
shliach. What's a havamina? They're not in the Berish.
Oh, you mamash asked the perfect kasha. That's exactly what the Gemara's next kasha is. So let's learn the Gemara's next kasha. Frank the Gemara, halamali. Why would I need a pasuk to tell me a guy can't be your shliach? They're not in the parsha of truma. They have no shaykhs to truma. Halamali kra. Midir abchia by Abba Omar B'Yochanan. The Omar abchia by Abba Omar B'Yochanan. Ain't no eved nasa shliach like how will get me at Baila Shalicha. An eved cannot be the shliach of a woman to be makabel a get that her husband sends to her. You know why? Levisha einay b'Torah getting the Kiddushin. An eved has no shaykhs to get in the Kiddushin. So an eved has no shaykhs to truma either. A goy has no shaykhs to truma either. So if a goy has no shaykhs to truma either, why do I need a pasuk of gamatem to tell me that a goy can't be a shliach? A goy has no shaykhs to truma. Dr. Gemara, a goy has a whole lot of shaykhs to truma. Dr. Gemara, Salkadai Itzrich, Salkadai Techamina, Eved, the law baratera who cloud, and never has no shaykhs to get in Kiddushin. He could never ever have Kiddushin or get. But an Ovid Kechavim can have Truma. If a goy separates Truma from his produce, if he's in Eretz Yisrael, it has a Kedusha of Truma, like any other Truma. If it's Kamtome, it's possible. A Yisrael can't eat it. If a Yisrael eats it, he's Chayav Keren B'Chaimish. It has all of the rules of Truma. The Tanan Ovid Kechavim Bakusi Chatarmu Trumasan Truma. So since a goy is in the parsha of Truma, Ema Shliach Nami Ovid. Maybe he would be able to make a Shliach, Kamashmon Atam Gamatem, Ma Atem B'nei Bris, Af Shluchachem B'nei Bris, a goy couldn't be your Shliach, take off Truma. Frank the Gemara Uller Rab Shimon the Potter, Rab Shimon knows a goy's Truma is not a good Truma. So if a goy's Truma is not a good Truma, I don't need Gamatem to tell me that a goy can't be a Shliach for Truma. Because the guy is not in the parish of Truma. The Tanan, Truma's Ovid Kechavim Midamas. If it fell into Chulin of a Yid, it will be Chulin and Truma mixed together. Because it is Truma. The Chayavin ala Chaimish, and if you eat it, you're Chayav Chaimish. But for Rab Shimon Poiter, Rab Shimon knows the Truma of a guy is not Truma. So surely a guy can't be a Shliach. So why do I need Gamatem? Atem Gamatem Lomali. Zaktamar, we have another limud that we can learn of Atem Gamatem. It's so Kedai Techamina, Hoyel of Amar Mar. Atem v'lo Arisa. Your Aris cannot separate Truma for you. Atem v'lo Shotzev. Your Shotzev cannot separate Truma for you. Atem v'lo Apatrubas. A Yosim who has an Apatrubas, they cannot be Machash Truma. Atem v'lo Atar Masheni Shaloi. So there are so many restrictions and limitations on who could be Machash Truma. Maybe even though normally Shliach should work, Ema Atem v'lo Shluchachem now. Maybe Shliach shouldn't work because by Truma you see there's a certain level of exclusivity. Kamash Atem Gam Atem, that even a shliach would work. So we need to stop here for a second, because we just learned that a goy cannot be a shliach. We learned from atem gam atem b'nei bris, avshluchachem b'nei bris. The problem is, we just learned a minute ago that when the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, the person who shechted the carbon was a shliach for everybody else. But in Mitzrayim, they were not yet mekabel the Torah, so they're goyim. If they're goyim, how does shlichus work? So this opens up a whole huge sugya about what was the status of Klal Yisrael before Matan Torah. So right off the bat, there are many Rishonim who hold that they had a din of Yisrael before Matan Torah. They're not considered b'nei noach. So therefore, it's part of the shlichus work. But even if you learn that they had the status of a b'nei noach before Matan Torah, it's still not fair, because the Chachamim tell us that the limit of Atem Gam Atem is not that a goy can be a shliach. It's ma'atem b'nei bris afshluchachem b'nei bris. Your shliach has to be the same as you. So if you're a b'nei bris, if you're a Yisrael, your shliach has to be Yisrael. But if you're a ben noach, as Klal Yisrael were in Mitzrayim, then the shliach could be another ben noach just like you. So that's how they answer this kasha. But this is a big, big sugya that Rosh Yeshivas have a lot of Torah to say. This parak is enough for Rosh Yeshiva to say shiurim on the whole zman. We just get to scrape the surface and then go weiter. Zok Gemara, Hanicha Rabbi Shua ben Karcha. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha was the one who taught us that by Kachim we have a raya that shlichus works. He was the one who brought the pasuk by Pesach Mitzrayim, where he asked, it says in the pasuk, V'shachnu I say kol kaladas yisrael. That's Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, but not everybody learns like Rabbi Shua ben Karcha. So if you don't learn like Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, we're going to have to find another source for shlichus by Kachim. And who argues on Rabbi Shua ben Karcha? Edel Rabbi Yonasan the mapakli lahai kra l'drash rachmina. Rabbi Yonasan uses this pasuk for a completely different drasha. Minalon, how will Rabbi Yonasan know by Kachim that shluchah shaladim k'moisa? The Tanya Rabbi Yonasan Aimer minayin shekol Yisrael kulam yoytzu b'pesach. How do you know that all of Klal Yisrael could have actually shared in one carbon? Now the chiddush of that would be is that not everybody has to eat a kazayas, because there's no way they would be enough for a kazayas for every member of Klal Yisrael if they're all sharing one little lamb. So the chiddush of Rabbi Yonasan of this pasuk is not everybody needs to have a kazayas. We know it from a pasuk shenemar v'shachtu oisay kol kahal adat yisrael b'nei arbayim, and the question is the same. Kol akol kulam shoytim v'alo einay shoychet ela echad v'mikan shekol Yisrael yoytim b'pesach echad. All of Klal Yisrael could share one carbon pesach. So since I need the limit to teach us that halacha shliach b'kachim minole, how would I know that shliach works for kachim? So tomorrow I'm to the problem. Minei. Yes, the main chiddush is that all of Klal Yisrael could share one carbon. But the fact of the matter is, all of Klal Yisrael is sharing one carbon, and only one person is shechting it. So you have the shlichus built right in. Zok Gemara, no. From there, it wouldn't be a right that shlichus works everywhere else. You know why? When everyone is sharing the carbon, everybody's a shutim in the carbon. Yes, maybe shlichus works if we're all shutim doing the carbon together. One of our group could check it for everybody else. But who's that I could check it for somebody in a different group? Who's that real shlichus works? So because of that, Rabbi Yonasan is forced to find a new source for shlichus by kachim. It says in the pasuk v'yikchu lachem, and this parsha is a weiter in Shemais, v'yikchu lachem ish se leveis avos se lebayis. One person is representing the entire group. That shlichus right there. Right, Gemara, but v'dilma hasam nami deis l'shutfus b'gavai. When this one person is taking it for the whole group, weiter the whole group are shutfin. So you don't see shlichus from an independent, free agent. Zok Gemara, true. But why do we need two psukim to tell me the same thing? That a shutif, a member of the group, can shech. In kain trei kroy lamali. There's clearly an extra pasuk here. Therefore, mainly Indian For the Shayach, if I don't need the pasuk to tell me that where he's a member of the group that he can check it, because we already have the first pasuk, the Neu Inyan L'Hechad L'Shayach. So apply to a greater chiddush that a shliach can check the carbon even though he's not part of the group. Frank Gemara, this pasuk of Yichla Ish Selave Savais is not available to teach us this halacha because Frank the Gemara Hami Boile Lechad Rab Yitzchak. We need it for the chiddush that Rab Yitzchak taught us that a katan cannot be the shliach. Amar Rab Yitzchak Ish Zoicha V'Loi HaKatan Zoich. Dr. Gemara, I don't need this pasuk for that because there's another pasuk in the Varim where it's the Hume Ish Lefi Achloi Tachayzol Aseh Nafka. Now you have another ish. Okay, good. So we have an extra pasuk. Akatimi Boile the Shaitin is a Pesach Al Yachid. There's another chiddush that we learn out of Yichchak Ish. You learn that it's possible for one person to have his own personal carbon. There are those who learn that there has to be at least two people nismana on every carbon pesach. You can't go solo. But there's one man who holds you could go solo, and he learns it from this same pasuk of Yichchak Hamishah. It says in the pasuk. Is that where we know it from? Where do we know that one person by himself couldn't shecht? It's from the pasuk of So Zolty Gemara, we need the pasuk, the shechtn as a pesach al yachid. Zolty Gemara, you're right. Rabbi Yonason will have to argue. Rabbi Yonason will have to hold overlook command Omar ain't shaytin as a Pesach al yachid. Rabbi Yonason will have to argue on that because he needs the extra pasuk. So if you want to learn the Yichchak Chamish Ish Selevei Seleboish, if you want to use that to tell you shlichus, you don't have it available to teach you that shaytin al yachid. And therefore, he'll have to hold Ein Sheikhn as a Pesach Al Yachid. I'm sorry, we'll stop here. We'll stop right here. So now we have all of our ducks lined up. Gittin and Kiddushin, we know from Vishulcha. Truma, we know from Atem Gamatem, but then the Gemara aborted that because the Gemara said that between Kachim and Gerushin, you'll know Truma. So Kachim, we know from one of two psukim. Either it's v'shachad oizek kol kaladas Yisrael according to Rabbi Shubin Karcha. If hold Rabbi Yonason, it's going to be from v'yikru lechem ish selevei savei seleboyis, and therefore we know that by kachim der shlichus, by truma der shlichus, by gershon der shlichus, and by kedushin der shlichus. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we finished the daf. Hashem, tomorrow morning we're going to learn at 6:45 and at 9. A good tavach. We're also going to learn at 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock in Aguda, we're going to learn on Yom Kippur, 9 o'clock again, for those who aren't tied up, building the sukkah. And then Tuesday morning, we'll be back to the normal schedule. Good tavach.